The next part of the video is going to describe the Hasta native. And this is coming from the divine forces of the lunar Nakshatras, as portrayed in the Vedas by the author named Radhe. Radhe is a great, very well-researched author who has pulled together the nature of all of the devatas of the lunar nakshatras as they are displayed in the ancient Vedic as well as Puranic, all Vedic literature. Specifically the Vedas. And she takes the nature of the devatas, such as in this case Savitri, and implicates it into what could be expected from the nature of a native who has the moon or the Lagna in the sign of Savitri, the sign of Hasta, who is lorded by Savitri. So, of course, the nature of the Hasta native can be from the Lagna, from the moon there, or from just an important planet there. That could be the Atmakaraka. It could be that there's just simply 3 or 2 or more planets falling into Hasta. So there's kind of a stellium in that nakshatra in a way. All of these can give the quality of Hasta, but when we read this, we typically mean it as the Lagna, the rising sign, as well as the moon. The moon being the most significant one. So if you have the moon in Hasta, this is what can be expected from the nature through what's given as the nature of Savitri, the devasta that rules it. Hello, Kimchi. My friend Kimchi has been watching my videos with their friend since way back, and I'm so glad to see that you've been enjoying Kimchi and that you and your friend have been hanging out with me all this time. Thank you so much for being a part of this. The energy of other people just makes the bliss of Vedic consciousness and culture that much more meaningful to me. So thank you for being a part of it, Kimchi. How sweet. Okay, let's talk about the Hasta native. Associated with one of the most powerful mantras, which is the Savitri Gayatri, or the Gayatri mantra. For the study of wisdom, this nakshatra confers on its native a strong attraction to spiritual knowledge. And this is something we've already mentioned. The person with Hasta, the Hasta native, is going to have a strong attraction and an interest in spiritual knowledge. Just as with Pushya Nakshatra, this native's journey towards enlightenment is likely to include initiation from a guru. Pushya has Brihaspati for its god. So, as the god Savitri represents enlightenment, essentially, the whole meaning and purpose of Savitri is the rising sun of the perennial, ever-evolving bliss of self-realization. So it makes sense that there would be an attraction to spiritual knowledge, and might even, the native's journey towards enlightenment might include initiation from some kind of guru. Nothing less should be expected from one born under a nakshatra classified by Jyotish Shastra as divine, deva, and with the aim of spiritual liberation, moksha. It's really the deepest meaning and purpose of Hasta, using the hand to, allowing the hand to be the channel of Savitur, of enlightenment, of true Brahmana, self-realized consciousness, and to put one's things in order in this incarnation such that moksha can come about. As with all nakshatras, however, the actual manifestation of these lofty qualities is dependent on other confluent factors in the birth chart and in the soul. And it makes, I'd like to mention again that I have a friend who I know who has the moon in Hasta, and they happen to be a Kundalini practitioner. They've gotten into a certain camp of Kundalini practice, and they are doing they are teaching this yoga, and it's a very specific, niche, nuanced path that they had to get into through the guidance of a teacher who acted almost as a sort of guru for them. So this is just more to the same point. My friend Kimchi has asked, could I do a Q&A someday? Yes, Kimchi, I will. Of course, if you have any specific questions related to what we're talking about today, you can always feel free to ask. But for a specific just sitting down and talking all things Vedic, I should do that. I've been thinking about doing that generally anyway. Maybe I'll do it while I'm, right now for 3 months, I'm at my dad's cottage. I'm writing my book right now. So maybe I'll take some days to just sit down and have a casual Q&A like that. Thank you, Kimchi, for prompting that inspiration. I appreciate it. I think it's a good idea. Cool. Now, in a worldly-oriented chart of a Hasta native, the quest for wisdom may be channeled through higher education and lifelong programs of self-study. An example is Bill Clinton, who had the Lagna, Mars, and Venus in Hasta, according to this author, who directed his abundance of Hasta energy towards earning advanced degrees. He's a graduate of Georgetown University, and he earned a Rhodes Scholarship to attend the University of Oxford. Clinton later received a law degree from Yale Law School. Now, with its faculty of purification, Savitri repeatedly cleanses the thoughts of devotees, enabling the mind to be a vehicle for wisdom. I think again of my friend who is a Kundalini yoga teacher, where Kundalini involves a lot of kriyas, which is cleansing of the nadis through various ways and means, especially through pranayama. So this divine ruler of Hasta impels the native to endure repeated mental purification until all thoughts, ideas, and beliefs run clear. As a result, the native's noble quest for knowledge is not always an easy one. At times, they must learn through repeated trial and error. Now, there's something I have to mention here. At the beginning of, in the episode where we talk about Savitri, which you can find on my channel, we had a moment of discussing Savitri as relating to sweet speech. Now, this seems to have come, if I read it correctly, dang, I'm not going to be able to find where I saw it. But needless to say, there is mention of Savitri as having a purity of mind and as a lord of sweet speech, whom one can pray to in order to sweeten the speech that they utter. Now that actually comes not from Vedic literature, but from one of the texts mentioned as the Vajasaneyi Madhyandina Samhita. So it's one of the Samhitas. So there is an inference that Hasta Nakshatra natives can have a sweetness of speech in some ways or fashions. But the author here, I think it's possible that there's a distortion through history, which comes from the author mentioning that Mercury is exalted in Hasta because Mercury in the sidereal tradition, Virgo in the sidereal tradition, is it holds Hasta. But of course, I'm a tropical Vedic astrologer, so I wouldn't necessarily say that the sweetness of speech is something that is inherently conveyed through Savitri because of that reason. In today's time, again, we're learning about the nature of the nakshatras. It's good for us to keep in mind and ponder for yourself if you are somebody you know who's a Hasta native, whether they have this creative verbal expression, imaginative use of words, this sweetness of speech, and a love of language and linguistics, which can develop into a talent for writing, poetry, song composition, storytelling, and even comedy. Our author notes that there's an emphasis of Hasta Nakshatra natives as getting into speech pathology, speech therapy, editing, translating, interpreting, or sign language, etc. So it's hard to know necessarily if that's a quality of Hasta, but I'm mentioning it here because this is what we do on our channel. We take the knowledge that we can and try to discern it. See if it relates to the inherent quality of the nakshatra that we've given in the Taittiriya Brahmana Nakshatra Sutra. Now, moving on. Famed as Hiranyahasta, the golden-handed one, Savitri also promotes manual dexterity, of course. So depending on the nature of the graha or planet occupying Hasta, there could be indicated proficiencies in technical crafts, especially through Saturn and Mars. Sort of systemic technical crafts, as well as artistry, having Venus in Hasta, or especially music, having the moon or Venus in Hasta, as well as acts of magic, having Rahu or Ketu in Hasta. There's mention, for example, if the third Bhavesha, of course, Bhavesha is the third lord. So, for example, for a Leo rising, Libra, it rules the third sign from Leo. So, Venus is the third Bhavesha for a Leo. For Sagittarius, Aquarius is the third sign from Sagittarius. So, Aquarius being ruled by Saturn, Saturn would be the third Bhavesha, the third lord for Sagittarius, right? So if the third lord, the third Bhavesha, which represents the hands, by the way, the third house signifies hands. So if the third lord occupies Hasta Nakshatra, and this falls into the sixth house of healing, then look to healing modalities that make use of the hands, such as Reiki or massage work. If the 10th lord of career occupies the third house in Hasta, then the native might even be a professional palmist or palm reader. This is just going to give examples of what can be expected from the technical manual dexterity and intelligence of a Hasta native. Or with someone with a house lord falling into Hasta, which is also interesting to contemplate. Of particular importance is the self-sufficient nature of the native. Hasta's Shakti of Hastastaniya, the ability to obtain gains with one's own hands, provides great self-reliance. So self-reliance, resourcefulness are a key to the Hasta native nature. There is a certain youthfulness or innocence in the native's appearance. This is complemented by physical attractiveness, best described as refreshing. These qualities reflect the early morning sun, as well as Usas and Nakta, who are the twin sisters that bring in the dawn, in the Vedic cosmology. Just like the animating morning sunlight that enlivens all creatures, the presence of the Hasta native illuminates, inspires, and stimulates those around them. At times theatrical in expression, their exuberance for life bubbles up from an endless supply of energy. Likewise, there is quickness in action and constant physical or mental activity for the Hasta native. Such tendencies can be attributed to Savitri's faculty of enlivening and impelling, and Hasta's jyotisha quality of kshipra, which was already seen as quickness or lightness, swiftness. Now, I'm just going to quickly read this. Yeah, this makes sense. The poster child for Hasta is Sherry Lewis. So this is somebody who is very much Hasta Nakshatra. This is a person who has the Lagna, the rising sign, and the moon falling into Hasta Nakshatra. Sherry Lewis is a ventriloquist, a comedian, and a puppeteer. Sherry Lewis displayed a unique gift with both voice and hands. With her refreshing and chaste persona and her brilliant sun-red hair, Lewis became famous for her show Lamb Chop, loved by children of all ages. Even the main character of the show, Lamb Chop, displays the innocence and animated qualities of Hasta. Prior to Lamb Chop, Lewis hosted the Cartoon Club, where she entertained children with stories, arts and crafts, tricks, and games. By the age of 13, Lewis was already performing magic acts with her hands and was adept at juggling, baton twirling, and piano. Very cool. Now, the Hasta native excels at those sports requiring a quick hand, such as tennis, racquetball, or ping pong, as well as sports and games that involve a quick mind. Mind-bending games, chess, and competitive video games. The Hasta native's motivation is a desire for competence and skill rather than the need to compete per se. They're more motivated by being competent and having a skill and talent that they can sharpen and carve through competition. Competition is a secondary motivation, if at all. Indeed, under most circumstances, this native actually shies away from competitive arenas, preferring to orchestrate the actions of others, just as Savitri and his two golden-rayed arms orchestrate the daytime activities of men, just as Savitur in the Vedas, as we've already read, didn't get into the actions or the competitions of the other gods, but it was orchestrating them. So, rarely found bullying their way through life, the Hasta Nakshatra native uses charm rather than brawn as a survival technique. It's working smarter, not harder. Should Hasta be afflicted, this native's amiable ways may cover up a tendency to manipulate others for personal gain. And the word that's described here is, even like especially if Mercury is implicated, but other planets too. Planets negatively implicated in Hasta might resort to such tactics as cooking the books for financial gains. Now, Bill Clinton, known for his political sex scandal with Lewinsky, had Venus in Hasta, afflicted by Mars also being in Hasta. And Saturn, I guess, was also in Hasta. Is that right? That's a lot of stuff in Hasta, which is pretty crazy. So, this is a sidereal person, so I'm just going to skip that paragraph and go to this last paragraph here. Finally, just as popular and glorified Ushas maintains a special relationship with her brother Savitri, a bond of endearment may exist between this native and a sister or sister-like figure. Perhaps such a person, accomplished in her own right, paves the way for the success of her Hasta sibling, just as Usha's paves a pathway for Savitri every morning. Beautiful. Very lovely.